Everybody, welcome to another episode of NFA Live. I am joined, as ever, by Guy from Coin Bureau. Guy, you have a nice, lovely setup today. Thanks for coming by.
It's great to see you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. And then Ben in the new undisclosed bunker, looking very shiny as I can see his face today. Ben, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. No one's really ticked off of me yet, so I'm doing pretty good today. So today we got a couple of
give them time, Rob. Give them time.
You know what? That's true. I have to allow people to ruminate and feel their anguish against me as it comes in, and we'll get to that today. That's for sure. So first things first, if you're not already subscribed to Guy and Nick and Jessica over there at Coin Bureau, they're doing some really great stuff, and they just started their live stream. And I got to tell you, it's pretty good. So check that out. I'll be in the chats every so often to do things. Also, if you're taking a look at, want to find some more information, check out Coin Bureau Club. I like this one because I can see Guy's total portfolio. I had no idea that he was into, well, I knew Rollbit, but I didn't know he had a meme bag, and Arbitrum takes up 0.96% of his in total.
He used to take up more before ARB started sliding. Along with everything else, to be fair.
That's okay. We're gonna get into altcoins today, as a matter of fact. So this ought to be good. And then Ben, I have to commend you for finally shilling my bag of Solana. I appreciate that. That was a pretty good video.
You didn't watch the video. I think I was shilling your bag.
Oh, that's true. You know what? I saw the first half of it. I'm like, oh, he's talking about Solana. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't going out too good. So I just shut it off. And then also, if you're looking for some really great information, check out Ben's website. I just noticed this week that your indicator dashboards, you can see how things kind of move together over time.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool, isn't it?
I did not know that. And now I can go over there and go, wow, things really did get overheated. And you can take a look at all these different metrics. Anyhow, I'm getting away from it. So everybody, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. Today, gentlemen, I just have a couple of questions for you because there are some interesting things going on in the space, that is for sure. First of all, the market, the volatility is quite insane. A couple of nights ago on Tuesday, we saw that the traditional markets were doing just fine. Everything was going very well. And then all of a sudden we had a huge drop. Bitcoin went from 62K to 58K in an hour. And there was only some slightly negative news as far as an ETF sell-off from ARK Investments. Also, yesterday, we were expecting some pretty big reports, NVIDIA being one of them, and they actually beat expectations. And I thought, well, that's going to be great. Now we're going to see a rally in the traditional markets, which would lead us to a rally in the crypto markets, and that is not the case. So NVIDIA looks like they beat expectations, earnings per share, 68 cents versus the 64 cents expected. Revenue was 30 billion versus the 28 expected. And they had just announced a 50 billion share buyback announced. And of course, with all this happening, the market itself does this for traditional folks. And this is early rounds or pre-market. And then of course, for our market itself, in 24 hours, I mean, we've seen a little bit of an increase. But the crazy thing is, even Toncoin is up 2.6%. And the founder is in jail, and the blockchain stopped producing blocks for over 8 hours. Here's the question. We have so much volatility and so many things going on in the market. Is the market expecting too much? Meaning, are the TradFi folks and the crypto folks, are we just expecting this massive liquidity to come in? And what gets us to the actual real bull run? Because I got to tell you, if this is the bull run, this is the lamest bull run I've ever been involved with. So, Guy, I'll start with you. What do you got for this long question? Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. I think to start with, the volatility we've seen over the last day or so. I mean, I think that's a lot of that is just liquidations, really. I don't think that's the drawdown has just been exacerbated by the fact that a whole load of people went long and got wiped out. So I think that's important to bear in mind. I think and as to NVIDIA's earnings, I mean, yeah, they sort of beat expectations. It confirms, if nothing else, that AI winter is probably still a little way off. So we don't necessarily need to worry about that yet. But I think really it kind of just throws everything else into perspective. And I think, the main things holding back the market at the moment are uncertainty. We were talking off air, we all just want this election to be done and finished. And I think that's how the market feels as well. I think that uncertainty is sort of weighing on the market, and we won't see any real resolution of that until November. And then there's obviously the usual uncertainty around regulation. Where I think we've got the Fed pivot now coming. Not this month. We're still in August, aren't we? Yeah. So towards the end of the month, and presumably sort of further rate cuts past that. But really, in terms of the market getting going again, in terms of a bull run coming along, we need new buyers and sellers. We need, and this is going to tie into, I think, the second thing you wanted to talk about, Rob. So I won't sort of front run that too much, but in order to get new buyers and sellers, in order to get retail interest, I think one of the things that needs to happen, not the only thing, but one of the main things, is we need stuff to inspire them. Yeah. We need inspiring products, and that basically means apps, cool apps, whether it's a cool game, whether it's some sort of retail focused app that allows them to do a cool thing, preferably without having them to get their sort of hands, quote unquote, dirty with crypto, whatever it is. But that's what we need, and those new buyers and sellers will come along. Looser monetary policy will help. Increased liquidity will help. I think it'll be FOMO. I think the main perhaps driver, other than a sort of breakthrough app, will be FOMO. You see Bitcoin get to 100K, which I think it can do. Ben, you might disagree with me here, but you might both disagree with me here. I think Bitcoin can get to 100K with with only a sort of few more participants than we already have, via the ETFs. And I think the FOMO that would set off would be enough to sort of bring other people back into the market. But that's what we really need. The AI companies doing well, stocks doing well is not going to be enough. We need a sort of vibe shift, if you like, to bring people into crypto.
Vibe shift and real world utility in crypto. I don't know if that's going to actually happen. All right, so we'll see if see if that works out. Ben, what do you have for us as far as like this market? I know you've done some pretty good videos recently, especially on macro stuff. But what's gonna bring us in?
Well, I think going to sort of the first part of the question about NVIDIA, I think first of all, you're not actually seeing the traditional market broadly down just yet. It's mostly just NVIDIA was down by a few percent. I think like other companies like Apple were actually up quite a bit this morning. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I did see that. I think that, let me just check on NVIDIA really quick. Yeah, I mean, it's down a few percent. I think what you're seeing happen with NVIDIA is that, they did beat on revenue and earnings per share, but I think we might start to see compression amongst some of their metrics. So for instance, like if you look at their profit margins in Q1 of 2024, their profit margin hit 57%. And then in Q2, their profit margin actually dropped to 55%. And this is the first time it's actually dropped since Q2 of 2022. So it's been about 2 years since we saw the profit margin for NVIDIA actually go down. Again, it's still higher than it's basically ever been, with the exception of the last 2 quarters. But that might be why the market, or that might be why NVIDIA investors weren't so pleased, because they're maybe wondering, is it starting to go back down? So I would say that's sort of the part for NVIDIA. As far as everything else, yeah, I mean, I think for Bitcoin and crypto, you really need to see looser monetary policy. I mean, fortunately, that is coming relatively soon. The Fed's probably going to be cutting in September. I mean, they've made that abundantly clear at this point. It would be really strange if they chose not to. I think the bigger question is, do they cut by 20 basis or 25 basis points or 50 basis points? Last cycle, in sort of the same year that the Fed pivoted, it took about, so we were also watching Bitcoin put in lower highs back then as well, back in 2019, Fed pivot year. And we saw that lower high structure. It took about 50 to 75 basis points of rate cuts for Bitcoin to break out of that lower high structure. So it might, and maybe I'll take more rate cuts this time, because the 50 basis points was a much larger percentage of the Fed funds rate in 2019, when the Fed funds rate was only 2.5%, whereas today the Fed funds rate is 5.5%. So you might need more. My guess, to really get the crypto markets moving, you're going to need a couple hundred basis points of rate cuts, and we're probably going to get 50 to 100 basis points in the next few months. My guess is we'll get more of that in 2025. So yeah, I mean, I think that in order to see the markets durably go back up, you need to get to looser monetary policy. And also, not only do you need to get to looser monetary policy, but you have to hope that the Fed hasn't done too much damage, right? And they can get things back on track. I mean, so far there's mixed signals, right? I mean, on one hand, you have real GDP that just got revised to 3% last quarter. That's pretty good, and if you look at the Atlanta Fed, it's tracking at around 2% for this quarter. But on the other hand, you have the labor market, the unemployment rate starting to go up. But then you have initial claims, which are still relatively low. So there's a lot of mixed signals, coming from sort of all sectors of the market. So I think what Bitcoin really needs, it needs looser monetary policy, and it needs to start to see the labor market normalizing and not continuing on its nonlinear trajectory. If we can get that, then yeah, I mean, I think it could get back on track.
Yeah, that's wow, a couple hundred basis points to get us back in. Those are pretty good takes. So, Guy, I can see where you're coming from, especially like that killer app to really bring us into the next level, and then actually have real world utility. We'll see. And then Ben, a couple hundred basis points and looser monetary policy. I think that's pretty much was the liquidity and what we need to bring us to the next level. So we'll see that actually happens. But like I've said before, I think this summer is shot. I mean, we're going into the fall, and hopefully we get to this presidential election and it doesn't go too far off the rails. And the next year we get the big thing. So thank you, gentlemen, for that one. Let's go to our next piece, which altcoins. Now, I know, Ben, you take a lot of heat for this, and so far you've been pretty right, actually, which was stay out of altcoins because they bleed against Bitcoin. But the question is, with so many altcoins struggling, do you think we're just heading towards a consolidation of these different alts? Because there's no reason for us to have this many L2s and this many L3s, and God knows if there's going to be an L4 or something like that comes across, because it just seems like there's so many companies out there for the token grab. So do you think we're going to see some consolidation, and when do we see for altcoins? And then before I ask the question, there was this, if some people say, well, my altcoin's doing pretty good. Is it really? There's this great site from CoinGoLive, coingolive.com. And it just takes a look at the percent price drop since the all-time high. And the one that's doing is doing the best, besides the stablecoin USDC, is Bitcoin, only negative 18%. And you can see that. Just take a look at this one. And I know, like, some people they'll go focus on the 7-day or the 30-day or what, like I do sometimes, but across the board, you are way, way down on altcoins. So do we see these things just disappear and consolidation, and what happens next? Ben, since you just started or left off, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not even something that is happening in the nebulous future. It's something that's been happening over the last several years. A lot of altcoins are actually, as you can see on the chart, the table that you're looking at, a lot of altcoins are closer to their 2022 lows than they are to their 2021 highs. And that, I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of those big layer ones that were really popular back in 2021, a lot of them are not doing so well. And even a lot of layer twos are really not doing so well. But that's just a natural part of the cycle. It's not new. It's not like this is new. We saw the same thing happen in prior cycles as well. You know, Bitcoin goes on a bull run. Some of the frothier stuff starts to go up, and then Bitcoin goes down for a while, and it helps to get rid of all the, a lot of the negative stuff in the space. Now, that doesn't necessarily get rid of all of it, but I do think that's a necessary thing. And actually, this has been going on at least since March, right? I mean, because Bitcoin's been putting in lower highs since March. So a lot of these alts are down a lot since then. I mean, the reality is that Bitcoin's essentially at the same price it's been at since March, right? Around 60K. Basically every single month since March, Bitcoin has hit 60K at some point in the month. But if you look at these alts, so many of them are already down 50%, 70% or more from where they were in March. So I don't even think it's this nebulous future thing. It's the process has been happening. For newer altcoins, it's been going on since March. For older altcoins, it's been happening since 2022 began, right? And that's the reality. I mean, again, look at the price of like Matic and Avalanche and Cardano and Polkadot. They're closer to their lows than they are to their highs. And in fact, Polkadot basically just retested its low, I think, just a couple of weeks ago. And if you look at their Bitcoin pairs, they're all basically just putting in new lows every couple of months or so. They're just putting in new lows, which is really the real way, I think, to value your portfolio. So yes, I mean, I do think the asset class needs a consolidation period, but I think it's been in that for a while already, and it could continue on for a little bit longer. I think that would actually be healthy if it did. But it goes to show, and I said this back in 2022, is that Bitcoin usually is the first to hit new all-time highs. Even though it's not as volatile as a lot of the altcoins, this is kind of the proof, right? You can see how Bitcoin has hit new all-time highs and a lot of alts are struggling. That doesn't mean all the altcoins are dead. I'm not suggesting that they all need to die, just most of them.
There you go, Ben. Why don't you just put a big sticker on yourself, say, hate me as much as possible.
No, I actually think I think next year, you'll start to see some altcoins do well on their Bitcoin pairs. So I do think that the Bitcoin dominance will be topping out in the next few months, and that next year you'll start to see some altcoins do well on their Bitcoin pairs. But with that said, it doesn't mean that all of them will, right? Some of them will just go away. They'll just die because the community has moved on to something else. And a lot of times altcoins will have sort of a founder or leader, and they'll basically dump their tokens on the market, and then they'll repeat it with another altcoin. So you have to be careful. Like, you want to make sure that if you are getting into the altcoin market, the tokenomics are at least somewhat attractive, and you're not just going to get dumped on. It seems like just about every day I'm seeing some type of like rug pull on mentioned on Twitter, where someone's losing all their money because they put it into some scam or whatever, and it just seems like people keep falling for that stuff. So I would say try not to fall for that stuff. Stick with the blue chips and just be patient.
And well said by said. Ben is great. Also remember, Jewelry Affair says Ben the Downer. So there we are for that one, Guy. So me and Guy are altcoiners. Let's not hide that fact. Guy, bring us back. Bring us back from what Ben just said. As Jewelry said, Ben the Downer. How can we rationalize investments into altcoins? Is there any safe haven for that? And of course, talk to us about the altcoin consolidation.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think because, I mean, following on from what Ben said, I guess if you like, it certainly, and I'm talking about infrastructure here, crypto, infra, and by that I mean layer ones and layer twos most specifically. Yeah. But when it comes to crypto infra, we've had the Cambrian explosion. and like now we need the mass extinction, I think, in a way, in order to kind of thin this out, because there isn't enough capital out there to sustain a never-ending stream of new L1s and new L2s, new bits of infrastructure, all this. Like, we now need shit that people can use. Like, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of killer apps, a cool game or whatever it would be.
You're right.
And I kind of hope that, really, because it's tricky, because I'm sure there are these founders out there who are looking at the current layer ones, and let's face it, I don't think you can point to any layer one out there and go, this is the optimal one, this is the best layer one that there is. They're all different. They all claim to solve the blockchain trilemma in some different way or other. They all claim to have massively high potential TPS, and very rarely do. They all claim to be decentralized, and they aren't really. But it's just, I don't think anything is really helped by kind of by more of that. I think what I'd like to see is the existing ones optimized, and the ones that just aren't up to it just go away and die. It's a horrible thing to say, but there's so much capital tied up in useless L1s that nothing's being built on. Things from not just the last cycle, but the previous cycle, and even the one before that. There's so much dead weight just hanging around there. And in terms of, like, you were talking earlier about kind of mergers and stuff. Mergers, I think, are very are tricky in this industry, because the tech involved is so often different. I mean, I remember, I think it was Polygon bought, I think it was Hermes Network, it was called, in 2021 or something like that, and they had similar tech, and that was, I think, widely perceived to be a very wise move, a good sort of merger. But in general, these sorts of things are so rare in crypto, because you're talking about different tech, you're talking about different philosophies a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But what I think we might see, an interesting one to point to, though, is like recently we saw those 3 AI projects merged, didn't we? So to form this artificial superintelligence alliance, whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
I think that was Ocean Protocol,
Fetch,
Singularity Net, and Fetch. Yeah. And that was really interesting, because, I mean, that seems ASI, the token for that, seems, I think, to be holding up okay. These things are all relative, but like, I think that could point to an interesting thing we may see this cycle, is that various projects whose goals, whose aims, whose tech perhaps overlap, I think we could see them consolidate. And I don't think that would be a bad thing at all, because, like, one of the things that crypto really lacks is good, talented developers. They're at a real premium. And I think, and certainly I think, AI developers, because there's now this big overlap coming between crypto and AI. AI developers who can also do crypto are at a premium, and so I think it would make perfect sense to see sort of merging in that sort of niche of crypto, and in others, if that is possible. For instance, like, perhaps, just thinking out loud here, something like 2 projects like Aptos and Sui, like,
right.
those are both sort of Solana killer layer ones. They both spun out of Facebook's Libra project. They've got teams who've kind of worked together in the past. They're both move based. They're very, very similar. I wonder whether we might not see mergers like that come along. And I think that could be good for the space, because that would decrease the number of projects out there. A well thought out and a well executed merger could bring, good tech and good teams together, good communities together, and result in a better product. My guess would be that probably what will happen is, and probably what a lot of projects are kind of holding out for, is a bull run like we've been talking about, most likely next year, and to see how that goes for them. And if it goes well, and they, their tokens, their coins or whatever, go up in value, and they secure the runway they need, then they keep going. And those that don't, those that stumble for whatever reason, those that don't do well, I think, we'll either see them, stagger on as zombies, like so many of them still do now from previous cycles, like I was ranting about earlier, or maybe we'll see some consolidation. And I think that consolidation would be a really healthy thing. So I really hope we see that, because at the moment it's kind of like, have you ever seen those pictures of North Korea? You know, they've built like these 6, 7, 8 lane highways or whatever it is, these great big roads, and there's like 2 cars on them. We're like North Korea at the moment. We've got these awesome roads and there's no cars on them. And so that's what we, you know, that's what, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, killer dApps, cool stuff that people can use.
Oh man, that was a good one. So I like where you're going, because I know like when we hear like, okay, Bitcoin's going to be the one to rule them all, which I still think is true. Some altcoins will make it. And you guys are both right. Ben says it. Most have to die. Either they have to die or they have to be assimilated or merge into something greater than themselves. Because without that, they're going to die regardless, and it's going to be a zombie company, just like you talked about, Guy. Now, I will say this, if we're going to like our last question, excuse me. If we're taking a look at acquisitions, people will say, well, that's not going to be good. It will be, because wouldn't you like to see some of your projects be assimilated into something greater than themselves? Like you can see like just take like Render. Render was on, it was an ERC20 token, and then it got assimilated into Solana. And then of course you just talked about the 3 tokens for AI that got assimilated into one super AI, whatever that was called. But if you take a look at it, like with, I know people don't like Facebook so much, but I mean, this is what big companies do. And this is what I think is always what's supposed to happen with crypto, is that these lower companies that really can't do everything, they're just going to be assimilated and merged into some big super crypto or digital asset and become a bigger part of the whole structure. And you can see this is what Facebook does. They don't have time to build everything from scratch. So they just go, I'll take you, I'll take you, I'll take you. They assimilate everything and they become a massive conglomerate globally. So I think that's what's going to happen, and I hope it does. And I hope some of my zombie bags get pulled into it. So that is that part. So gentlemen, I appreciate those answers. That makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about real quick, as we move into this cycle, because I know I get a lot of questions on the live streams. I get a lot of questions on X, which is, how long is this going to last? How long are we going to get there? And is this the bull run? I don't want to talk about is this the bull or the bear, but the thing that I always think to myself is, what gives me solace is a couple of things as far as like some indicators. One of those 4-year cycles keep me pretty much sane, because I think, well, everything kind of goes in cycles and it's been worked out so far. But another one I've been really appreciating is this ROI from the bottom. And we talked about this a couple of times. And you can just overlay this, like these cycles just keep repeating and repeating. This is the market cycle from the bottom. This is from 2018 all the way to 2021, taking a look at November. And if I overlay that with the cycle previously, it pretty much lines up. And then of course, we take a look at this cycle right now, we're pretty much right where we're supposed to be. And it always kind of happens between like this 500 and 700 day point from the market or the cycle bottom. But then of course, where does it go? It goes up like this. So just real quick question, what kind of keeps you guys sane? And Guy, I just left off with you, so I'll let you go again.
Okay. Well, I guess it might sound a bit cynical, but the fact that governments have no other choice but to keep printing in order to service their debt. So I guess if you want a metric for that, you can just look at the US national debt. It keeps climbing. There's no way out of it, and that gives me hope. It gives the cynic in me hope, because it says to me, like, sooner or later, in terms of cycle, monetary policy will loosen, and the animal spirits will return, and that will be, and the appetite for risk assets will go up. But it also gives me hope because we have a hedge in the form of Bitcoin. So I guess that's the sort of first thing that springs to mind. Just the fact that this is how it is. Fiat currencies are just there's no other way for them. They just need to keep printing. And not only do we have an alternative, but it also means that sooner or later the cycle will play out as it has done in previous years. Maybe not exactly, maybe not to the exact time frame. But so I think Ben, I think you tweeted about this earlier today or yesterday. So far it's kind of doing that.
Ben, that will lead me to you. What do you got?
I mean, the way I stay sane with it is, I diversify, honestly, because I think the reality is no one actually knows what's going to happen. I mean, there's a scenario where we go up in 2025 and do what we always have done in the post-halving year. There's another scenario where we get a recession, right? And I don't know which of those is going to play out. I think it makes sense to hope for the best and plan for the worst, right? Be hedged in case it doesn't go your way. When I first started crypto, I always was trying to like time things. Like I want to time the bottom, I want to time the top. But I think it makes sense to have a plan no matter what happens. So like if you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, what happens if Bitcoin goes to, as Guy was saying, like what happens if it goes to 100K next year? Are you going to feel uncomfortable with that? If so, you could hedge, right? And be like, all right, well, I'll have some Bitcoin in case that happens.
Yeah.
If it goes to 40K or something, then, if that makes you feel uncomfortable, it probably means you're too exposed in the market and you should have, some hedges. If you actually run a modern portfolio theory simulation with Bitcoin, ETH, and US dollars, it actually calls for having about 15 to 20% in US dollars. And the reason is not because US dollars are going to give you a great return. It's just because occasionally crypto gets these big drops. And when it does, you want to have the money to take advantage of that, right? If you're just 100% deployed in the market, then when you get weeks like what happened at the beginning of this month, where Bitcoin, had that wick all the way down to 49K, you can't take advantage of it if you just went all in at 70K, right? You're just left hoping that Bitcoin bails you out. And given enough time, Bitcoin does usually bail people out, right? I mean, that's the reality. But I would say hedging is a good idea. So for me, that means not only having Bitcoin, but also having exposure to like index funds. It is true that the S&P can occasionally drop a lot. And there's been times where it drops, 30, 40, 50%. But, over long on a period of time, the S&P generally trends higher because it's just where a lot of passive income goes. Also, having other hedges in like commodities, like precious metals, could be gold, silver, fixed income, all that stuff, and even having some in altcoins if you want to take on a little bit more risk than Bitcoin. But I still think we're in the phase where if altcoins go up next month, it's only because Bitcoin went up, right? So that's why I still am sort of in the Bitcoin camp. But I do think it makes sense to hedge, especially as we get closer to 2025. But that's the way. I think you have to be hedged. You have to know, all right, this is a percent I want in this, and you have to be comfortable with where it goes. And then also just having a strategy, right? If you DCA according to like a risk metric, it doesn't have to be anything specific, but just pick something. Be like, and it could even be maybe you use the fear and greed index. Or maybe you use like, whenever Bitcoin is below a certain metric, right? Whatever it might be. And you'll start to become a little bit more sane. And then the last thing I'll say is to just live life. I've spent a lot of my time over the last couple of years watching the stupid ETH Bitcoin ratio chart and trying to convince people that it was going to go to exactly where it is right now. And at the end of this, I'm like, there's nothing waiting for me, now that it actually happened. So I think like, I think it makes sense to just kind of like live your life and I don't think investing should be like everything people consume themselves with, right? It should be something that you do, because if you don't, right, if you just sit in cash forever, inflation's going to eat you alive, right? Your purchasing power is just going to go essentially to zero if you don't have any hard assets at all and you just sit in cash. But on the other hand, I think the people that are most successful in crypto are probably just the people that make a few trades every few years and then forget about the market the other 95% of the time, because the reality is most people lose money day trading. and swing trading. So I think that's the way to stay sane, right? Do it, invest, but don't make it your life. Diversify in case whatever you're investing in doesn't go the way you think.
Yeah, I have to agree. Perfectly said. So all these stuff that we talk about in NFA Live and in our individual shows, Ben and the CRYPTOVERSE and Guy at Coin Bureau, it's all for entertainment purposes only, right? There's a reason why we named this show exactly that. It's not financial advice. It's for essentially just to get away from other parts of your life, maybe. But for right now, for all the things that we're doing, it's well said. I think that's there's a reason why we talk about diversity. And I know you guys said, getting into crypto, but if you go to other sites or other social media presence for different crypto people, it's not what you're going to hear. You're going to hear cash is trash. And there's, you should put everything into this particular crypto, and you should, just keep going and diamond hands forever. And I've been saying this, and Ben's been saying this, and Guy's been saying this forever. That is the goofiest thing you can possibly do. I think you have to diversify just a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to be a hard climb. Unless you just like Ben said, you don't care. You put it into something, you step away for a long time, and then you come back. Although I will say, if you're doing an altcoins and stepping away from altcoins and coming back, sometimes because of their transfer, you're like, oh, I lost everything. So that's why these days Bitcoin's a pretty safe bet. Anyhow,
that's why the unit of account, I think, should be Bitcoin when it comes to crypto, right? Value your alt in Bitcoin, and then it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and then like I get into some precious metals. I don't really get into equities and stocks and real estate. That's kind of like the thing. But I know, Benny, what we just talked about is you're diversifying. Guy, for you, just a quick follow up. Do you invest in anything else besides? Because I mean, you're in Dubai. So are there any other like investments outside of crypto?
A bit of real estate, not here in Dubai, back in the UK. But yeah, it's something I'm thinking about. But I'm sort of the sort of investment landscape out here is a bit strange. I'm sort of still kind of getting to grips with it. But yeah, a lot of wealth, a lot of my wealth tied up in either Bitcoin or real estate.
Yeah, I like I said this before on my channel. Once we hit this blow off top and these certain indicators hit, I'm going to step down from the channel until the next bear market. And people will say, well, what do you do with all that money? I mean, because you're going to cash out. The next big piece for me is loans, and I'll talk about that later on. But gentlemen, thank you for the answers. I appreciate it. Let's get into the last one, and then we'll do a little Q&A, which was I put out. Because first of all, Ben had this great question last week. I don't know if you guys were there for it, but check out that video, which he talked about if cryptos were characters in a movie, what movie franchise would it be, perhaps, and what kind of characters would they be? And we all had our separate answers. I like Guy's more than mine, but so I had to really scrape and find out like which will be a good final question. So I just asked the community, and the community helps me out as usual. So the question, I put a poll out. I said, okay, I want to do one of these. One would be like, if you had dinner with Gary, what would be the dinner chat? The second one was, if crypto was a central bank, what would be their monetary policy? And the last one was, if crypto had a bucket list. If cryptos had a bucket list for the end of 2024, what would it be? So that one won out. So that's what I'm going to ask these guys right now. So let's see. What do we just? Ben, I'll start with you. I know.
So what do you mean, like if they're what they're trying to accomplish, or? Yeah,
so like let's say that excuse me, let's say Bitcoin is an actual person, and it's like and it says okay, I have to do this before 2024 ends, whatever that is. I want to be in the hands of more people. I want to stop being called this. I want to do whatever. And then let's say like Litecoin. Litecoin has a bucket list. My bucket list is I don't want to be called second tier. I don't want to keep dropping so much. And let's say like Solana. Solana has a bucket list, and that bucket list is maybe I don't want to be on Ben's channel. And the second thing I want to do is stop breaking down and get out of beta. So that would be the bucket list for the cryptos. and I'll have you take it. And it doesn't have to be all of them. Just like give us like a couple.
I feel like I have to pull up Coin Market Cap so I can even like remind myself.
How about this? Ben? How about take like Ethereum? Ethereum has a bucket list.
Yeah, I would say Ethereum. Maybe its bucket list is to stop bleeding, right?
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's it. I'd like my bucket list to stop bleeding. Great.
Yeah, like it keeps getting hurt, injured, and it keeps on bleeding out. Yeah, and I mean, for Bitcoin, I would say for sure, like just more, getting in the hands of more people. I think for a lot of them, it would have to be like no longer being thought of as a scam, right? Because I feel like so many people think of crypto as a scam, and even like my peers in the world that I'm in, I think that a lot of people, I think we sort of live in a bubble, right? I mean, no pun intended, but we do, because everyone here sort of views crypto through a very specific lens. But in the real world, right, when we're not just sort of knee deep in the cryptoverse, in the real world, I feel like crypto can actually be an uncomfortable topic to talk about for a lot of people. Because maybe they lost a lot of money in it, or they just know someone who has. So I feel like for a lot of them, it would have to be known as, just not being thought of as a scam. And how do they doing something to convince people otherwise, right? So that people have more faith. I think, and it kind of ties back into one of your earlier questions of like, what's it going to take to actually get to a bull run for the altcoin market? I think the answer is that, you have to have people view these alts in a different way than they've been viewing them, right? Recently. So that's what I would generally say. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like some other clever ones. A lot of
That
them.
was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Well, a lot of them are essentially in the same basket, right? I mean, a lot of the charts look essentially the same for any altcoin. Litecoin has been bleeding to Bitcoin forever, right? Forever. And, I will not pass up on an opportunity to dunk on Litecoin. It is, I've heard people say it's like silver to Bitcoin's gold. That's not true. Litecoin, in my opinion, is going asymptotically to zero against Bitcoin, and it's not going to change. So it can try everything that it wants, but that's the reality, I think, for Litecoin.
That piece is going to be chopped up and on X later today, but
put it on there. I put it on there many, many times. I've gotten into some heated arguments with people about Litecoin through the years, and I tell them, I'm like, look, I'm not saying it can't go up. It's just that if it goes up, it's only because Bitcoin went up more. But yeah, so maybe if you're Litecoin, maybe it's what it's trying to accomplish is no longer living in Bitcoin's shadow, but it will always be in Bitcoin's shadow.
Litecoin's maxis are just devastated right now. But I will say, I will say this: I appreciate like when you say stuff like that to go against the masses, and I like when Guy does things like that, especially on his channel where he's like, "Here's the pros and cons of this project that I just talked about, for 10 minutes. Here's the crappy parts about it," and it just kind of brings balance to the whole thing. So thanks. Anyhow,
but you don't even need to know the narrative for Litecoin, right? Like just look at the Litecoin Bitcoin chart. It's down like what 99%. And every time I look at it, it just goes down even further, So you have to be careful with a lot of those alts. Yeah, I mean, as far as Solana goes, I think Solana, I mean, it had a lot of baggage from the whole FTX stuff. And it's actually, I mean, given that, given, what it's done since then, it's actually been fairly impressive, right? I mean, it has. I think that, it does have a chance, but I also think that, the pattern is kind of following ETH Bitcoin's pattern as well. Like it dropped 90%, rally 500%, and then just kind of not really make that next move that everyone thinks is going to happen. And it just keeps sort of dying out rather than making that next move. But for Solana, I imagine, it would really like for people to not view it as the blockchain that sort of goes down all the time, right? And is
chasing that mythical 1 year of uptime.
That's
right,
true.
Right.
And also, Ben, on top of that, they have a scapegoat. It's called Toncoin, and they're starting to go down.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah. But But I mean, hey, I guess the silver lining for Coin is that, Solana used to go down all the time, and it still did pretty well in 2023 and the first half of 2024. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily something that has to kill the project. But yeah, I would say for Solana, it would just be to sort of rid itself of its baggage from prior cycles. And I still think there is some of that baggage that still exists. And that's actually one of the reasons why so many new altcoins in new cycles do better, is because they don't have the baggage from the prior cycle. They don't have all the bag holders waiting to sell and break even. And that's why a lot of the newer altcoins do better than the older. They're sort of like a new guard, a changing of the guard every 4 years or so. But I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I don't really
They still managed to pick up some baggage, though.
That's right. They still managed to pick up that
Even
baggage.
Well, I mean, look, the
There's
reality
always
is
some baggage lying around.
when an altcoin goes up 1,000% or 10,000%, you're going to have people buying the top, and those end up becoming bag holders, and then they end up spreading a lot of the FUD, right? Because they're like, this sucks, it's a scam, I'm down 90%. They capitulate, or if they don't capitulate, they just wait, and they wait for it to go back up and then sell into it. And that's why a lot of older altcoins never put in new all-time highs, because the bag holders from the prior cycle will never allow them to. So yeah, no, I think for Solana, it's got to be trying to just get rid of all that baggage and just sort of being seen in a different light than it was in the prior cycle. And you could already argue that it's done that to some degree, but I still think there are still remnants of it that still do exist.
Well said, Ben. Well said, as everybody. Some people love those responses. Some people hated them, but that's what we're here for, right? For a little balance. Now let's get Guy. Same question for you. You've got it as we have these cryptos. What's their bucket list? Not all of them. Just give us a couple. Throw them out there.
Okay. I sort of I maybe overthought this a bit, because I've sort of anthropomorphized some of them. So I've imagined these cryptos as actual people. So like ETH, it wants to go deflationary again. So it wants to lose weight. It's a guy. He's gotten too bloated, and he just needs to shed it, and he needs to go down the gym and just kill it in there 7 days a week. Cardano is like someone who.
Sorry, Ethereum's got a code, a layer 2 code, and he puts on another code, a layer 3 code, so we can lose all this. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah. He's trying to sort of strip it back, lead a more sort of ascetic lifestyle. That's all ETH wants to do. Cardano's sort of resolution is to stop trying to read all of Marcel Proust and just go out and get a girlfriend. That's what Cardano needs to do. It's been too busy reading French existentialism. It needs to just get out there, show the world what it can do. Atom, I kind of feel like Atom is this father figure of a big family, all the cryptos in its ecosystem, but because it doesn't actually have any use in its ecosystem beside farming airdrops, no one pays attention to it anymore. So Atom needs to reassert its authority as the sort of head of the family. It's got all these kids running around the place, and it needs to get them to listen to him for a change.
That's it.
And get some damn utility. MakerDAO just wants people to appreciate him. He's having a bit of a midlife crisis. He's just had a rebrand, which is basically like the crypto equivalent of buying a leather jacket and a motorcycle. And he wants MakerDAO's been around. It's stayed. DAI has ticked along. MakerDAO has made money. No one cares. No one acknowledges that. It's about time people did, So he's trying to get noticed again, and Pepe just wants to rule the world. Pepe wants an ETF.
Pepe wants an ETF, and that's why we look at Pepe dominance, which I've done a small video on that one. All right, gents, that was a good one. I always think like the bucket list would be for Bitcoin would just to be like, hey, I just want to be left alone so I can do my thing and stop interfering with governments and make it. And then Solana, I said, the bucket list is to get out of beta and be a champion.
Yeah.
Actually make things work. And the last thing would be Cardano. And Cardano's bucket list would be like, why doesn't anybody like me? I'm so safe.
Yeah.
I never go down, but yet
Mm.
I don't have as many friends as I should, and no one wants to build on me. So
I'm
that's
so
it.
well read.
I should have way more people
one
building
can.
on me, but that's it. So
Yeah.
so that'll be my last piece. All right. So everybody, thanks so much for stopping by for NFA Live. That was a good one. Now if we'll just take a couple of minutes or so, we'll ask some questions and we'll get some feedback and then get the heck out of here so we can go back to not watching our portfolio go down. All right, let's see. Cardano wants a girlfriend. What's that? Cardano wants a girlfriend, but there's nobody around. Solana's a girlfriend, but she keeps going. Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't read the last part. That's a good one.
Moving on.
That will be spliced up onto X. Ah, man. Here's a good question. Oopsie. Rob, did I trust dump Fortress? So this was actually coming out that Fortress was the part of iTrust for a Roth IRA for the security level, which is they would securitize all the different crypto assets that they had. Now they moved on to, and like I did a quick video on this one. If you're not in a TradFi, this is not good news, but some people would say, and I think it's a good move, is they're using now called Forti. And Fortis is a registered bank, an FDIC insured. And what they're doing is they're moving those crypto assets to a registered bank here in the United States to securitize their digital assets. So they're going to get away from Fortress, which I got to tell you, I mean, there was another aspect of Fortress which wasn't very positive because they had some kind of ties to, I forgot the name of the company that collapsed. They separated a year ago. Now they're just breaking ties and going, look, we're just going to go with the registered route. And the reason, obviously, is because their CEO, Kevin, has been more into the security and for the side of, I think he was which bank was it? Security side of some investment contracts or investment companies. So I see this as a positive. I know people say, well, it's a bank, and why we do that? You want security, there you go. Let's see. Digital Asset News, Prime Trust. Thank you. It is early for me. Why is Ben in a bunker? Ben is, first of all, in a very nice location. I do like this new setup that he has. Let's see.
I like it that we have that Ben now has light on his face as well. He was sort of appearing and then disappearing into the shadows last week. It was a little bit unnerving. It's good to see. It's good to see him properly lit. Ben, you should always make sure to be properly lit.
Ben is in the altcoin bunker. I don't think that's true. Here's a good question. What's that, Ben?
I said I can try staying lit.
What's this one? Guy, are you happy in Dubai? Yes, I am. It's taken a while to get used to how different it is, but I think when you move to a new place, this is something I've learned. When you move to a new place, I think the best thing you can do is quickly get your routines in order. Like, certainly if you're someone like me, like I don't like it. I don't know. I'm too old to have a disordered life anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so as things really started coming together when I got my routine down, just how I go through my day and, all that sort of stuff, what I do in my downtime, et cetera. And ever since then, it's been fine. But I do miss England, especially in the summer, just because it's so gorgeous there when it's not raining. But it's great out here. It's fun. And it'll be even better. Everyone's out of town for the summer, apart from yours truly. So it'll be nice when everyone's back and there's more sort of people to play with. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's good. Same thing with Puerto Rico. All right. There's no real questions that I can see. So I just have a last question for you guys. What's the any upcoming videos for this, next couple of days or so? What do you guys got planned? Ben, Bitcoin
Nick is filming one about Near Protocol tomorrow. That's a really exciting one. I hold some near, just for full disclosure, but yeah, so that should be coming fairly soon. And I've been working on another one about quantum computing today, which is fascinating. Ben, I some other time I'd love to get your take on that, because I imagine you have a far more informed view of quantum computing than I do, even after the research I've been doing. So I'd love to, but that's one for another stream, I think.
I don't have any plans. I just sort of wing it, honestly.
Sounds good. I love an honest answer. Everybody here, but it is good stuff. Everybody, if you're not following Ben as he wings it and gives us really great information, check him out over in the Cryptoverse. And Guy, of course, Coin Bureau, and of course the Coin Bureau Club. You can check out a lot of the not only behind the scenes, but new reviews that you can't find anywhere. So I appreciate that site. Yeah. Anyhow, links from the description. Gentlemen, thanks again for stopping by. I appreciate it. I think next week we got it on Ben's channel. No, Guy's channel.
No,
right? We just did buy it.
It's me next week. Yeah. Just for the people asking in the comments as well, Jess is currently climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. That's why she's not around. I think she made it to the top. So at least someone was up. But yeah, that's where she is at the moment.
Yeah, the only person's portfolio that's up is the one that goes there. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, thank you. See you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.
See you next week.